All right, we're in ISSS Knowledge Engineering 22 on 713. And we have one message that we'll paste in from Chris and see what other organizing or what comes up that we can do. But anyone have anything they want to bring up or what to do? Well, we can start here then. Does anyone know about human systems inquiry?
I've heard of it, but I have never gotten a real clear, um, definition, if you will. Probably somebody from Hull would be knowledgeable.
Okay. Okay. Seems like systems inquiry about humans as system of interest. This looks like a useful link, also related to our earlier discussion on like systemness and the history of systems.
Who is the author of this?
Bella
Bella.
Banathy.
Oh, Banathy. Yeah, okay. Then Gary Metcalf would probably be the expert.
I missed it at the beginning. So is this one of the points that Chris is asking?
Everything. Yeah. What is in white text Chris wrote?
Right. Oh, back here. Okay. Collaboration, accessing database in an LLM.
And these two. We'll take artistic privilege.
I think that's what we started discussing last session, wasn't it? About Chris, we started bringing up these points about collaboration and accessing the database.
Okay. Or maybe on or and. That could be self-sustaining. Are there simple off-the-shelf apps that could help? Are there off-the-shelf apps that could help with simple collaboration? What would people say to that?
I would say from my business experience that I think lots of people in lots of ways have been trying to get together suites of software or tools to help collaborate. And in my experience, there's been no ideal thing found yet, if there is such a thing. But you know, it's a whole industry, isn't it? Collaboration suites. Yeah, I think that the idea is there. I think one of the original ones was a coffee pot, wasn't it? so that people all gather around the coffee pot and then they chat.
At first I was like, is that like a software, the coffee pot? Yeah, I mean, isn't this the funny question? Oh no, remote work 2020. And just like, well, my answer is Coda. But it's always situational because the projects are so variable and they can change so much. So there's not just one solution, but it really depends on what we want people, how we want people to collaborate and why.
So some of the basics for me are a repository, a central repository that can be shared and accessed, a calendar, some sort of Zoom or meeting tools, you know, the Office suite, you know, Word, so that you can create documents, PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if this is sort of like what Chris means or what other people mean, but these are the things that I look for in a collaboration suite. Just the infrastructure side of things anyway.
Yeah. Jitsi can do fine with video meetings just for free and open source, and calendar, I mean, that can be people's private calendars, or it can be coordinated with Coda. But yeah, I mean, it's all about how you set it up. Calendars don't do anything by themselves. Blank pages don't do anything by themselves. So I think that's why, like, this is the dream, that there would be something that you just kind of press go. And it does that. But then the interesting thing is, like, with autonomous agents is like they are able to work in a more templated way than any human could. And so a lot of energy is already going into setting up functional workflows for autonomous agents, not necessarily for improving the interface or the usability for humans. But okay, it's kind of a secondary question. How can we help curate walled gardens and prompt engineering that make LLMs more accessible? So that's probably in reference to the discussion last time about, like, maybe even if you don't have access to a given text, you might be able to query it with a LLM.
I think Shingai, weren't you trying to, in one of your previous posts, trying to engender more collaboration amongst your readers?
Yes, absolutely. That is a goal. Yep. Yeah, I'm Substack has a chat feature, so I can set up a chat room directly on the Substack platform for readers to talk to each other that I could enable. I've also considered using something called Discourse, which is open source software for creating forums. And then there's another tool called Discord, which is more of like a real-time chat for community building. So yeah, those are I definitely will do the Substack chat feature, and the other two are ones that I could explore in the context of my newsletter. I would also add that Notion is a tool that I'm a fan of. I would describe it as a simpler and more stripped down version of Coda, so less functionality, but potentially a bit more accessible.
Yeah. I mean, supporting high quality participation in asynchronous document archipelagos is really one of the biggest open challenges and opportunities, I have to say. Because as hard as it is to get people to go to a synchronous meeting, there's like a humanness to it. And you can often like people will join regular meetings even for years. And like just by seeing the real event, knowing other people are going to be there, it helps them make the time to join. And obviously unique synchronous things can happen. Yet to support the kind of engagement where people read potentially infinitely copiously available documents and then make the kind of moderated actions back on that knowledge base. I mean, you could wake up at 2 a.m. and do it. No one's stopping you from any time. And it's like the infinite accessibility of it and a few other factors make it really challenging, even when people are being paid full time to do something. So like, you know, Discord is more like a chat platform. Discourse is more like a forum. But to go from even a high activity forum of any format towards aligned, like synergistic collaboration is a very high skill coordination activity. And it requires a real distribution and participation with a base of potentially hundreds to thousands of people, so that tens can even have any idea of what is happening in asynchronous documents, so that several can do the work. Not that makes them more valuable, and everyone's doing different things in different communities. But finding the right balance between like, this is what we're working on, here's exactly where you fit in, top down, with like, let's just all try to collaborate on something and see where it goes, bottom up. There's just a lot of degrees of freedom in that.
Daniel, could I share my screen quickly?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, so this is just the Substack chat platform that I was mentioning. Share screen. Let's see. Oh, I'm actually not. Oh, there it is. Okay. So George, this is actually from Rachel Donald. I believe she interviewed you like last year or a few years back. And so
Right.
she had, oh, are you seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, she enabled the chat for her Substack newsletter in December. And so you can see her her first post right here, where she's just asking for people to give ideas about how to use the chat feature. She got 71 replies in here, which is pretty impressive. Looks like she has an active community, and it doesn't look like she's been using it a lot, but this one got 31 replies, just asking for suggestions about guests and topics. So I feel like this is kind of a natural first step for me, since it's built right into Substack.
Who is the community that's responded in this particular chat?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
I just want 71 replies. What community is seeing these questions and responding? Who is this community?
Yeah, so this is a woman named Rachel Donald, who has a newsletter called Planet Critical, in which she interviews people focused on systems change. She interviewed George a while back, and she also interviewed Jesse Henshaw as well. And so everyone who subscribes to her newsletter can participate in this chat. Yeah.
So when they subscribe to her newsletter, do they get added to this chat as a community?
They do. They have access to the chat when they subscribe. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Just how to move it past a conversation while maintaining the conversation. It's like, and to make that self-sustaining and not just kind of like a performance art or philanthropy endeavor.
Yes, I kind of think that we need to there needs to be some sort of unique draw or unique selling point to engage people and convince them to invest their time. So an exemplar that springs to mind is the Agile community, who seem to have developed a huge following and a set of activities, maybe even going down the road of setting standards and mentoring and so on like that. And, you know, is there something in the systems world that could draw people to them, a message that would interest people to the point that, because with the Agile community, I suspect a lot of them are happy to invest in it because they might see themselves as developing sellable skills, you know, on the job market. But are we there with the systems movement and systems ideas?
Well, you know, one thing about collaboration, it's not the tools, it's the motivations, the people. And I don't know, my experience, I'm a little kind of sour. Now I'm engaged in a couple of collaborations right now that don't require, and I think I mentioned one of them with Lynn Rasmussen and Tyler Volk. And we're motivated to collaborate on the ideas, the things that we're most interested in, and that goes fairly well. I've been collaborating unofficially or loosely, shall we say, with Tyler for many years now, and we've been making some progress. But it really depends on you wanting to be a part of a community and accomplish something, hopefully.
So with Tyler, is the objective to develop each of your own ideas?
Well, we realize that our ideas map onto one another. There are some how shall I describe them, operational aspects that we're exploring. The other problem is terminology. So we've got, you know, two different sets of terminology that we have to try to figure out how to resolve. And Lynn is basically very familiar with not just Tyler's and my work, but also with like Len Troncalli and many other people out there. And so she's acting as sort of a reflector, mediator. And she's got some ideas of her own, but by and large, what we're trying to do, we actually tackled this. Gosh, it's been 3 or 4 years ago, and we had Len Troncalli and a few other people in the group, and it just almost immediately just kind of split into separate personalities, separate interests, separate so forth. We didn't keep a focus, and so that kind of fell apart. And then, but Tyler and I kept going at it from our own perspectives. So yeah, I just think you have to have that. You have to have personalities who want to collaborate, and you have to have a reason, a motive that is both personal and group, I think.
Yeah.
So that I don't know what the question about platforms really gains you, because if you're really interested in collaborating with folks, you know, you find a platform, and like Daniel said, I mean, we're collaborating right now on Coda. We're using the Coda platform, so I don't know. I think that's pretty much all I've got to say on the topic.
But I think to your Rob, your point about agile, I'm not super familiar with that community, but and I know it's not all about the like certification or ways of working, but it speaks to the kind of status or the way of the systems community that it's like conceptually the most fascinating area and in breadth and depth. And I think it's like then what else needs to come into the picture to support people's sustained collaboration? Like in it is the narrowest circle, but then with it is going to be a broader circle. Like research on system science is the meta, but research with system science is to some extent, but should be applied in domain specific and system specific settings far more. And I think that's like that's the broader adoption of system science, not people researching system science itself. That's, I think, a narrower adoption setting, but a high leverage one to anybody who wants to go that path. But it's almost like those are different lanes or different gradients within an ecosystem that are not always clear.
Yeah, I agree. I think my perspective is until there's a bit more unification within systems science and some standardization around tools and methodologies that make it easy for people to do system science, it's going to be really hard to reach a broader audience. So I see, yeah, like the work, George, that you're doing with Lynn and Tyler is very important. The work that we're doing to flesh out some of the ideas in your recent textbook. When I talk with my friends, they're like, okay, it sounds cool. You know, I get it, but it's like a little abstract. It's a little heady. And so I think, you know, yeah, once we have tools, frameworks, methodologies, you know, show people here's how you do system science to, you know, analyze the system you care about. That's when reaching out to a broader audience can really happen.
Like in the undergraduate setting, were your students mainly in the computer science programs, or were your students coming from different departments, George?
Yeah, I had both. I taught a freshman level. You know, they had to have so many hours of science courses and stuff like that. So I taught a course there for incoming freshmen. I taught a upper division course for people who were late to the game, getting more of their science stuff, and then computer science majors who were wanting electives would come in and take that course, that latter second course. So there were kind of both, and I had some success in giving the computer science majors a little bit more technical work to do, so that they felt like they were doing more than just, listening to ideas. And also the way I taught, is called the systems track. It's what they mean by that is like operating systems, architecture, and things like that. But I taught it using those systems principles. That is to say, showing interfaces, boundaries, hierarchies, all those kinds of things within the context of the hardware and the operating system software and so forth. So yeah, I had quite a mix.
Hey, Tom. How goes it? Anything you want to bring up, Tom, or we can continue?
So who is our target audience here? Is it those interested in system science, or is Chris? Oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Did somebody ask me a question? I'm sorry, I'm just getting
yeah.
tuned in. I'm on the road, just arrived at a destination.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Anything you want to just bring up or anything before we continue?
No, I'm still trying to get my bearings here.
Okay. Yeah, just well, the bigger picture is in knowledge engineering, we're making enabling systems for ISSS and for education. Specifically, we've worked on the kind of incremental releases that Rob has provided through the Systems Community Alliance regarding the ISSS resources and archive. And so that's the interface that helps us look across ISSS collections and yearbooks and things like that. But there's no updates on SCA today, like no new release just dropped. So we're kind of just considering some notes and questions from Chris S. And I guess thinking about collaboration, motivations, and systems, and how that might specifically relate to our work here in terms of these two threads that Chris raised regarding essentially collaboration and access to ISSS archives or otherwise for a research purpose using established techniques and or contemporary approaches like language models.
So if we are, if knowledge engineering is trying to leverage the assets of the ISSS, the archives, and also trying to develop the education stream in parallel with the knowledge engineering stream. The question that sort of has arisen over the last few sessions is, in a way, collaboration, but who are we trying to collaborate with? Is it the system science community and the systems or individual system scientists, or is it the wider public? And I suppose those are two different audiences and two good questions for Chris to try and get a handle on, so that he can focus his attention on trying to develop the collaboration and sort of the LLM or knowledge and LLM aspects of it. But yeah, so we have been discussing various collaborative things, but it's not quite clear to me, at least, what our target audience is.
What about kind of categories being collaboration on system science, explicit topic being within systems. Second category, explicit usage of system science and approaches, but about other domains, which might be the very every domain that people care about, ecology and all this. And then collaboration that does not explicitly use system science. And we're kind of the least interested in that category. That's basically outside the scope of our field.
So let me comment on that just a bit, though. When you say don't explicitly use system science, there are so many now inter and transdisciplinary projects and studies within the sciences, and I include the social sciences as well, that are somebody who does recognize system science when they see it would look at them and saying, well, they're using system science. They are not as read into the official literature, if you will. But they've read Kaufman, or they've read Bertalanffy, or they've read this or that, and or cybernetics is a good example of a lot of people doing outstanding work that uses cybernetic principles, but they're not calling it that. There's this whole group of people that Tyler is engaged with, the big history people. Are you familiar with that group? And among them is a guy by the name of Greg Henrique, I think it is. Henriques, yeah. Yeah, Tom, you know that.
I pronounce it Henriques.
Well,
yeah, actually, I attended a big history conference last weekend, mostly because it was near where I live. I could walk to it at Villanova University.
Yeah, great.
It was very interesting. And Tyler made one of the presentations.
Yeah,
and he's trying to integrate his work with Greg.
Right. So what I'm getting at is that there's a bunch of people out there who are actually thinking systemically and using some of those principles, not because they're doing it in an organized way or they've taken courses in system science per se. But here's my point. We should be aware of those. We as a group of the ISSS should identify when we see something that's going on out there that's actually good system science or using a good system science framework, and try to make contact with the people and try to basically say, hey, look, you guys are doing some great work and it's very systems oriented. So here we can make some links. We can maybe join forces. Be sort of a like a nexus or something of information about these kinds of activities that are going on out there. So my point is, I don't think we would necessarily not be interested in that third bullet point of collaborators, as long as we understand that we're trying to sort of consolidate ideas within the systems framework.
Yeah, thanks. Just to kind of clarify, like, not that this is like lost to us.
Yeah, right.
But that, yeah, but and I think your point is great. It made me think about systems that could, for example, digest incoming new papers. And then there's kind of a syntactic and a semantic way to connect this to system science. The syntactic way is the usage verbatim of systems ontology terms, feedback, etc.
Right.
The language model enabled method is usage of semantic embedding vectors, where we can do clustering based upon the embedding of a new paper and triangulate it or locate it within systems landscape. So let's just say that we had the embedding landscape for all the ISSS yearbooks. These ones talked about ecology. These ones talked about, society, and this one's about physics. New paper comes out. It comes up as interest, potentially because it either mentions a term that we care about, or it's semantically close to perhaps some specific citation that we already know about. And we can therefore rank or attend to different blog posts or tweets or whatever papers according to a kind of like systems adjacency score, and then reach out to those people with procedurally generated or manually created contact opportunities. We noticed greetings from a knowledge engineering project at ISSS. ISSS is da 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 da. We noticed that your new paper, feedback cycles in algae in the Pacific Ocean, used a lot of systems words like A, B, and C, and we used our language modeling platform to recognize actually 3 relevant citations. We didn't see them in your bibliography, but I think it would anchor it in the broader system science context. If that's interesting to you, then we can continue this conversation through this, or that.
Yeah, that's great. I would like to know, on talking about the citations, bibliographies, where those researchers are getting their ideas from. So looking at what they've read or what they're referencing, to me would be a fairly important thing for us to understand.
Yeah. It's so funny. The bibliography is just, it's so rich in what it does and doesn't include. And information in what isn't included is like the dark matter of information. But I think that's where that is where we will also discover a lot. And this provides another, I'm sure we've discussed citation networks. Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. We want things like quotations, citations, and so conceptual knowledge graphs, as well as like more specific bibliographic. We had a discussion of so-called hallucinated citations in limited language models, but we talked about how that's not really an issue.
Well, I think Tom's got done some work on that, haven't you, Tom? You got authors and dates and
Yes, I have. I've been thinking along these lines for quite a while, maybe 10 to 15 years. And I started capturing information, and I'm still amazed at how much I run into that's completely new to me. For example, the big history people is a good citation, although I was familiar with them some years ago. There's a lot of people that are into this, and the question is how to pull them together. I started a model of trying to define system types. There's a lot of people who have done work on this and have some pieces of it, but my vision is a universal of all system types. Now, I understand that would be huge, but we could get an initial organization or structure that then could be added over time. I also tried to capture organizations. I have a fairly large list of organizations, still not totally complete. I have people and documents, which includes books and papers and other types of expressions. And I have a lot of quotations from them. Something that I've come across that seemed to describe something superbly well, and I wanted to capture it. I continue to add to this almost daily. The version that's on the web page today is about 1.5 years old. I have a new one that I've promised to Peter soon, but I haven't quite gotten it ready to go. So this seems to work, although it takes a lot of time, and it works over time, so it only improves. I like to think of it as a perfectible, in the idea of Acuff. Russell Acuff talked about perfectible things, something that you can't do perfectly, but you can make it better all the time. And I found that this seems to fit the description. And a key part of it is a feedback loop. So it can display things in a way that they're understandable and take feedback and then update it so that it can continue to improve. And my vision is something that puts it all together, or it goes in that direction. Because the whole idea of systems is the big picture wholeness. And I don't see how you can do things producing more fragments and how that's going to accomplish what we need to accomplish. But I've thought about where this can go, and it seems like the real thing that we want to get to is the ideas. So you can take in somebody, they may talk about it in a different way, use different terms, but it's the same idea. But I haven't done much in that direction since then. But I know it's a difficult problem. It seems to me we want to understand the whole, but the whole is so big and complex that it's very easy to get onto the little part of it and get, go down a rabbit hole and tie yourself up forever. So how can we bring all these pieces together, get an overall structure without spending our whole career on some little piece of it? It's an interesting problem. I'm glad you guys are looking at it too.
Yeah, it definitely is. And thanks for all of this. When you're ready with this next release, we can analyze it to the point of connecting ideas, which has like in principle and in practice issues. I think it can be done through the syntax and the semantics. Syntax is based upon exact term matching, but across languages and time and speakers, term matching is highly limited. So a semantic layer can be enabled, but as Chris Fields or anyone else studying quantum information theory helps us understand, there isn't an a priori or an objective semantics, only semantics with respect to a reference frame. So that's why the semantic embedding that a given language model provides for a text is not an absolute statement about the text's meaning, but rather its projection in some informational space. However, if we have different language models and they are finding that two texts are close in differently constructed embeddings, that is a very strong diagnostic sign of semantic similarity. But that doesn't mean that there's rhetorical similarity, because somebody might say, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and someone might say A, B, C, D, not E, F, G. And so to introduce rhetorical analysis above the semantic is another level of challenge too. So there's a lot of layers to it, but I think with what we're working with, we should take all those features into account and try to at least sketch these kinds of systems that we want, and just continue to make the nest more and more salient for the people who want to collaborate on this most narrowly. And then understand that this collaboration it extends outwards through transferable methods and outreach.
One of the things that's struck me, and I've spent time on more recently, is multiple definitions. When I started my interest in systems and studying, I assumed there was one accepted definition. I soon found that there were many. I have dozens of them that I've captured. So that means much of the discussions that we have, people are using the term system, but they have a different idea what it means. So we're not communicating effectively. So that's one of the issues. System types, of course, goes into it as well. People have made distinctions in different, I think of them as dimensions. And I have lists of dimensions and distinctions that people have made within them. Seems like the distinctions is a basis for some overall organization of types. And I don't think the idea that there is one system definition is sustainable, because people use different ones and they have a lot of ideas that have been developed around them. So I think we have to recognize that there are different definitions. Then there's a question of which one do we want to follow forward with, with additional study. So one of the very basic things, of course, is emergence. Does a system have to have emergence or not? And exactly what is emergence?
All right.
So
this is why
I think we're.
I'm sorry, Tom.
I think we're stuck in a number. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you had paused a little bit. What I was going to say is this is exactly why I like framing it as systemness, as opposed to the definition of system. Although I do use that term definition, but I'm careful to say it's the mathematical framework defining systemness that allows us to specify this. This is what we mean by this. Now, anybody can have any definition of system that they want, but if you pin down what are the characteristics of systems and have a placeholder set up so that you can capture whatever specifics are true of any given system and put it in there, then you're not getting into arguments about what the definition of a system is, I hope. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to avoid that battle because that goes nowhere. It can become a showstopper because people are stuck in their definition. They don't want to change it. So I've done this in a much smaller scale in business. And I found one way to approach it is to get people to give me the definition of whatever it is we're trying to define. And once I get all of them, call them A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3 or something, and how they're related to each other, and then decide the best thing to call them. And I've found that's generally acceptable with a small group of people anyway.
Shanghai,
but we can't go anywhere with having an ambiguous term as the basis of our organization.
Shanghai, you got any ideas on this? Because you've been digging deeper into it.
I'm sorry, was that to me?
Oh yeah, unmute, Shingai.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, nothing super profound to add in this moment. I mean, I agree that we have to recognize that people have many different definitions of the word system. And I think it will be very helpful and productive to pick a definition, define it mathematically, and see where it takes us. So that's kind of where I'm focused. I just think there will be a lot of value in picking a mathematical definition of system and exploring it and building it out and seeing what utility it provides. I think that's really important. And so I feel like I don't see a lot of that. And yeah, that's where my focus is in this moment, is the mathematical definition that you provided, I think should be further explored. And I think other people should provide alternatives that could be tested against it.
Yes. Oh, anyone else want to add something, or I'll show one way that we're approaching kind of an analogous problem? Okay, within the ontology of cognitive phenomena and cognitive security, here's our pattern language-based approach. So each of these are basically like index cards. All that we have to agree in order to use the index cards within or across communities is that we're talking about the same topic, and they can be synonymous as well. But the index card can then be associated with different definitions that are listed as assertions, versioned assertions that people or systems make. Index cards alone and their cryptographic identifiers can be shared across communities, or they could be shared more as like a packet with respect to what information you wanted to share about them. And so it's open-ended. We can continue to add thousands of patterns, and we slowly add them to the front end. And then meanwhile, these are all being re-rendered in Coda. We associate different patterns as moderators within a community. Now, if somebody else wanted to take those index cards and do different associativities, they could do that. And then we have it set up so that people can contribute answers to different questions and use their submissions to incrementally associate different topics. Even from the first time hearing about your database, Tom, I thought about creating fusions or being able to bring it into this kind of a system, which we call Atlas. But this speaks to the pluralism and federation, which is like it's like you first just need to agree on what topic is being discussed. And that's always the interesting thing with multiple definitions. You know, multiple definitions of chair, multiple definitions of table, that's all good. But that is actually happening within a nested level of analysis where somebody has already agreed on what is a table and what is a chair, outside of edge cases where their definitions may differ. And then with the reference established on the index card, then there can be pluralism with respect to specific definitions. So I don't know if it's kind of just like a meta or knowledge engineering approach, but I think that there are procedures that knowledge communities can engage in that are not like a sort of Cartesian approach to figuring this out. Like, we're not just going to think through it. What is the definition of a system? It's not something that can happen in one person's mind, and their conviction on it would mean little more than their conviction. But I think that there are procedural ways that we can integrate the knowledge and assertions within and across communities that in practice will make a lot of these challenges moot. A lot of it comes down to tools and methodologies and enacting processes that takes it out of the definition wars. It moves into a yes and a pluralism space, which is what I think is natural for systems. But those are just a few pieces that we work on, and this approach could easily translate to systems ontologies as well. Like we've thought about every time somebody publishes a paper on overconfidence bias. Again, whether discovered by syntax or latent embedding, we could communicate with that person and ask them to write a more extensive contribution to the atlas or do other requests. Well, oh, thanks, Shingai. This looks cool. Yeah. And then have one graph for the bibliometrics, one graph for the semantics. Deep fruit detection. That's next level.
And what is the technology you're using here?
This is
Making the
just
graph?
this is just a link that Shingai pasted. Let's see. I mean, it's likely just a bibliographic using standard network visualization software on a bibliographic connected graph.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a measure that's based on what they call co-citation and bibliographic coupling. I'm sending a link to their about page right here. And they pull all the data on research papers from Semantic Scholar using their API. So they're just pulling in a bunch of data from Semantic Scholar programmatically, and then displaying it in a network graph based on co-citations and bibliographic connections.
Yeah. Yeah, very nice. And again, these methods will increasingly be enabled with the semantics. So, oh, we have a paper at, on this manifold. We're missing this one. Generate that paper. Fill in the dots. Yeah. Any other ideas or topics?
Just a quick mention, Tom, you probably already realized this, but when you're describing the perfectibility, I think, is that the term you use, perfectibility or improvability?
Perfectibility, yes.
Yeah.
No, perfectibility.
And using the idea of feedback to try to get closer and closer to the truth kind of thing, reminded me of a Bayesian learning machine.
Yes. I'm somewhat familiar with that. There was just a book that I read in the last year that talked about, I think it's by a guy named Azarian, Bobby Azarian.
Oh yeah, he's in that big history group too.
Yes.
Is that book The Romance of Reality?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I'm reading that right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I did he's actually joined for 3 live streams.
Oh, good.
At the Institute. 15.1, 15.2, 15.3. If you look up in Active Inference Institute, Bobby Azarian, as well as Greg Henriquez, actually. A little bit of different conversation. Yeah.
I think he might be in the discussion with Tyler and Greg.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining. See you next time.
Okay, take care.
Bye.